couple minutes and then, so I gave your names and email addresses. So if there is a question from somebody watching or listening, they may end up emailing you that question. I think that's unlikely, but just as a heads up.
You're also doing a call-in line.
We have a call-in line here, but the way that it was set up is it was listen only. Lights are you're completely under your control.
Where I just want to see if I open these windows and I make these overheads.
Yeah.
How would I do that?
So you so do you want the black up?
Yeah. Let's see what it looks like. It may be better than that one as well.
Yeah.
And then can I mix this overhead?
So there's two different overheads.
Yeah.
There's one on the stage.
Check, check. Check, check.
Is that better or worse?
I would say it's better.
Is that better? Okay, thank you. Hey, Ed, grab that door.
These guys down? You good?
No, they're good. They're good.
Yeah, it's still on the wall.
How's everybody at the office? Probably not feeling
Everybody's
much.
happy. I haven't seen anybody really, but I think everyone's doing fine. It's nice to see people again.
Good morning. My name is Jason Dunn. I'm the United States Attorney for the District of Colorado. With me on the stage is Eric Ballier, who is the Deputy Special Agent in charge for Homeland Security Investigations here in Colorado. We are here today to announce the indictment by a federal grand jury of Michael Sang Correa, a national of the Gambia who currently resides in Denver, for the alleged torture and conspiracy to commit torture of 6 Gambian citizens at the direction of that nation's former president. First, a bit about the Gambia. Gambia is a small West African country of 2 million people, but for a small portion of the country bordering the North Atlantic Ocean, it is completely surrounded by Senegal. From 1994 to 2017, the president of the Gambia was Yahya Jammeh. Jammeh came into power through a military coup he organized with several other members of the country's military. While the form of the government he established was technically a constitutional monarchy, in truth, he governed primarily by intimidation, fraud, and violence. In order to maintain control for 23 years, Jammeh established a military-style unit called the Junglers. Members of the Junglers were selected from the ranks of the Gambian armed forces, but operated outside the regular chain of command, receiving orders directly from the president himself. In March 2006, the Jammeh government learned that individuals within the Gambia were planning a coup. In response, the Junglers, acting on behalf of the Jammeh government, arrested numerous individuals believed to have been part of the plot. These individuals were taken to the infamous Mile 2 prison and to the president's National Intelligence Agency headquarters in Banjul, the capital, where they were interrogated and tortured into confessions by Michael Correa and other members of the Junglers. More specifically, we allege that Mr. Correa conspired with others to torture 6 individuals suspected of plotting the failed coup attempt. The defendant and his co-conspirators severely and repeatedly beat their victims with their fists, feet, boots, and other objects including pipes, wires, and tree branches. Some victims were stabbed with knives and bayonets. Mr. Correa and his co-conspirators sometimes covered the victims' heads with plastic bags and subjected others to electrocution on various parts of their bodies, including their genitals. The indictment further alleges that one victim was suspended over the ground in a bag and beaten severely. Others had molten plastic and acid dripped onto their bodies and were burned with cigarettes. Some had sand rubbed into their eyes. The clear objective of this torture was to preserve, protect, and strengthen the power and authority of President Jammeh, and to intimidate, punish, and eliminate opponents of his government. In 2016, Mr. Correa traveled to the United States as a bodyguard to the then Vice President of the Gambia, who was attending the United Nations. While here, the Jammeh government was forced out of office following a national election that Jammeh lost. Jammeh subsequently went into exile in Equatorial Guinea, purportedly absconding with millions of dollars from the national treasury. Perhaps not wanting to return to his native land and face justice for his alleged actions, Mr. Correa overstayed his visa and attempted to hide in the United States, more specifically here in Colorado. And but for the incredible work of investigators with Homeland Security investigations, he may have stayed hidden. Instead, he was found in 2019 and arrested for immigration violations. Since then, he has been held at the ICE facility in Aurora, until this morning, when he was arrested by HSI agents and taken into custody to face charges for his alleged acts of torturing Gambian citizens. Those charges include 6 counts of inflicting torture on specific individuals and 1 count of conspiracy to commit torture. I cannot overstate the significance of these specific charges by this office and by the Department of Justice. Mr. Correa is being charged under 18 U.S.C. 2340, a statute that is applicable only to individuals that are non-citizens of the United States, acting under the color of law, who commit acts of torture outside the United States and are then subsequently arrested within the United States. Since being enacted in 1994, the statute has been charged only 2 other times. In one case, the defendant was dismissed after he was exiled to his native country, and one resulted in the 2009 conviction of Liberian Roy Belfast Jr., aka Chucky Taylor, for torturing Liberian citizens at the direction of his president father. He was convicted and sentenced to 97 years in a U.S. federal prison. If convicted here, Mr. Correa faces up to 20 years in federal prison for each of the federal counts he's been indicted with. It is our hope that Mr. Correa will be convicted on each count and that we can ultimately help bring justice to the people of the Gambia. And it is our hope that this arrest sends a message to the rest of the world that the United States will not tolerate human rights violations or government-sponsored torture. And when such foreign nationals are caught within our borders, we will prosecute them. This case is being prosecuted by attorneys from my office, along with trial attorneys from the Department of Justice, Human Rights, and Special Prosecution Section in Washington. I want to thank the hard work of Homeland Security investigations, including HSI Denver, with support from HSI agents in Dakar, Senegal, as well as personnel at the U.S. Embassy in Banjul, the capital of the Gambia, and the FBI legal attaché in Dakar. This case has also been significantly supported by the Human Rights Violators and War Crimes Center within the Department of Homeland Security, which was established to further the government's efforts to identify, locate, and prosecute human rights abusers in the United States, including those who are known or suspected to have participated in persecution, war crimes, genocide, torture, extrajudicial killings, female genitalia mutilation, and the use of recruitment of child soldiers. And with that, I will turn it over to Eric Ballier with Homeland Security.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. As U.S. Attorney Dunn laid out, these crimes and allegations are especially heinous and gruesome in nature, to say the least, and the victims deserve justice. HSI and our international partners will continue to hold human rights violators accountable from regimes that seek to oppress their own people. In trying to take refuge in our community, Correa demonstrates how human rights violators will try to hide among the communities that they have terrorized, and we're here to ensure he is held accountable for the crimes that he committed. Thank you.
Happy to take questions. Colleen?
Just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how he managed to hide here. Was he with other people from Gambia here, or how did he blend in? Or did he?
My understanding is that he was married and had a wife here. I don't know when she arrived. My understanding is that they're no longer married. And I don't know if she was here first and then he came here, or what led them to come to Colorado.
They're both here illegally?
I don't know about her status, but once he overstayed his visa, he was.
But it wasn't like he came here and met someone and got married. He already had somebody?
I don't know the answer to that.
Can you talk at all about how you focused in on him and Denver in particular? If he initially was in New York with the United Nations, he overstayed his visa, he disappeared to here. How did you guys get a bead or a track on him?
You know, I'll defer to HSI on that. My guess is they can't reveal their investigatory techniques, but I will just say that they did great investigatory work, working in conjunction with officials in the Gambia, and were able to figure out his location. Do you want to add anything to that?
I would just say that through the cooperation with the U.S. Attorney's Office here, as well as the Department of Justice, special agents from HSI were able to kind of follow all communications trails, financial trails, every aspect of how he left breadcrumbs, if you will, to identify him being here in Denver. Without going into exact specifics or investigative techniques, they really left no stone unturned to confirm, A, that the person they thought was him was actually Correa, and then B, the fact that he was residing here in the city of Denver for a significant period of time.
When he was arrested or taken into custody, was it peaceful? Did he resist? Any details on that?
It was a very uneventful arrest. He was cooperative. He didn't resist. And he made his initial appearance this afternoon.
Can you say where in Colorado he was living?
He was living in the city of Denver.
The city of Denver, was he working, employed? Was he in hiding, or was he like out living life? Just
I would quantify it as saying he was living a fairly normal, subdued life. The best I could say is all indications are he was working as a day laborer.
okay.
And can you explain, you said that he was arrested in 2019 and held in ICE facility until today?
Correct.
What was happening in between, the in-between time?
In terms, from our side, the investigation was simply ongoing, and we were building our case and make sure that we had an indictment that we could present to the grand jury and prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he was guilty of the charges that we allege.
When he was arrested, though, you suspected he was this person who was involved in torture, not just a regular immigration.
In 2019, he was originally arrested on the immigration violation, but the investigation into the torture charges was ongoing. And so he was picked up on the immigration charges and then held, and we were tracking that process while the investigation on the torture charges continued.
But it wasn't like, when he was arrested on immigration charges, you had a hunch that this was bigger than an immigration case.
I'll defer to Eric, but I believe that is true.
That's accurate, yes. And, you know, the significance, as U.S. Attorney Dunn laid out, of the 2340 charges, it takes a lot of investigative work across the globe to ensure that the elements of those charges, that we could meet the burden. So while he was being held on the immigration violations, the criminal investigative side into the torture allegations was continuing.
So does his country want him back? I mean, is that gonna, I mean, obviously you're not gonna let him go, but I didn't know if that's something that's a U.S. diplomacy thing, or his country wants him back to face charges there, or does that even come into play here?
I don't know what conversations have been had from a diplomatic sense with the Gambian government, but we have every intention on prosecuting him here and having him serve jail time here in the United States.
And so, and just to clarify, the 1984 law, you said it's only been used 3 times, allows US authorities to charge a foreign national for torture that happened in another country because they were living here? Is that something you're being aware of?
Generally correct, yes.
Okay. And that's only happened, and so, and you said one time a charge was dismissed, and then the second time, it's only, so it's really only been, someone's only been convicted of this, under this law once.
Correct.
And I was wondering about his victims. What is their status now? Are they still alive? Have they been notified about this?
Some are, obviously, some are not. Some have been deceased for a significant period of time. The victims that are alive, we are coordinating efforts with them to ensure that they're aware and kept abreast to the best that we can of the details and progress in the case, understanding that victim rights and victims as witness is extremely delicate, and given the circumstances as Mr. Dunn laid out, very personal experience in this case. So our investigators are working both with government and NGOs on notifying the victims, what the status of the case is, how the case is progressing, and essentially what the next steps are.
And what were the years that he was torturing I know you said it, but.
Relevant to the indictment, we won't speak beyond the four corners of that, but it was in 2006, I believe, when the, prior to when the government was voted out there, there was the allegations of a coup attempt in the country. And so the individual victims that we name were brought in, and the torture occurred then.
In 06.
Yeah, I can double check that, but I think that's correct.
Did you give a number? You said six, as per this indictment, it's 6.
Correct.
Okay.
If it's an ongoing investigation, do you anticipate that these numbers might increase?
I can't comment on that.
And I think you said at the beginning, was this attempted murder or murder? Did some of the, is he accused of killing some of the 6 people? Or just?
No, the allegations all relate to a charge of torture under the statute. And those are the only allegations that are in the complaint right now.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
So I will email you the indictment and press release, as opposed to giving you a hard copy. Post-COVID, I think it's better to do electronically. Is there anything else I can help you guys with today?
Whiskey.
I'm sorry?
Whiskey.
After 5. Is that people have found multiple images of him on Google, but that's not a non-government source.
Okay. Yeah, I guess, I mean, I don't know if he's big enough that we would have shot him before. If he's,
No, I don't think so.
no, okay.
No, and we can't do mugshots.
How did this, I mean, I don't know if you can answer this, but how did this start? How did they even know about this one guy tortured 6 people in another country or living in Denver? It's so.
So I don't think that, I don't think that's in the 4 corners of the indictment. That may come out at a later date. Fair question. Fair question. All right, thank you, guys.